Joining us now, Julian Zelizer, professor of history and public affairs at Princeton University, and Kevin Barron, national security analyst and president of Elevation Global Strategies. Gentlemen, welcome to the weekend. Julian, let me start with you and the question about, and this is the thing that vexes me the most about what we're talking about with regard to Los Angeles. The defense secretary saying that if the violence doesn't subside, that he will deploy Marines on U.S. soil there in Los Angeles. Tell viewers why that historically why that has never happened and why that has never happened.
Well, presidents are very reluctant to deploy this force. There is legislative constraints on their doing so, and either they have the Insurrection Act, which does give presidents broad authority to use this kind of force, but has been very reluctantly deployed, or with regards to the National Guard, there is work with the governor of a state to bring in forces when needed. But what the secretary is announcing is a whole other level of intervention without it being requested that raises concerns about expansion of presidential power once again, this time combined with the use of force that can be quite dangerous on the ground.
And Kevin, let me just, on this same question, because you used to cover the Pentagon when you were a journalist, talk about, from the Pentagon's perspective, the idea that this could happen, that the Secretary of Defense is thinking, has warned that he's going to deploy Marines on U.S. soil.
Well, it's something that's on the books and is always possible, but as we're saying, it's so rare. I think, to me, none of this is unexpected. None of this is surprising, right? We heard on the campaign trail, and we heard even in the last Trump administration, they were itching to send troops in to put down the George Floyd, riots and protests, and they've been itching for a reason.
President Trump said he wanted asked why he couldn't shoot.
That's right. He can shoot the protesters.
They've been itching for a reason to do it. So, of course, they don't need to do this. I've heard other commentators talking about how you can see what's happening in the streets. This does not look like something that you need to send in the troops for.
Right.
But it gives them the reason to do what they said they want to do, which intimidates any other city into thinking that it could happen there as well. It intimidates any other, civic protest that might be trying to organize to help either block these police and ICE agents from coming in to do what they're being asked to do. So it's just set up something I've feared the entire time, which is a violent clash between two different types of law enforcement or military forces in this country, when one thinks that they're doing the right and legal job they're being ordered to do, and the other is thinking the same. And here we go. You might see some sort of standoff on the streets of L.A.
Julian, you are a historian. We are continuing to see the White House and administration officials use the word insurrection over and over and over again, right? They talk about this invasion that's happening. It seems very tied to Title X, which is the law they're leaning on to be able to send in the National Guard without the request from the governor of California. As a historian, what is the significance of that, right? It doesn't feel like something they're just doing, right? Randomly tweeting about it, right? It seems kind of coordinated.
Well, the point of having that restraint is so that presidents don't do this very easily. We are a country created with a notion that presidential power has to be limited. So limiting the president to cases of invasion is meant to be a check for the president to keep using that term, to keep bringing the public back to the concept we are being invaded, this is an insurrection, is essentially creating the preconditions rhetorically for the president to then use force, or we saw it with the power of deportation. So the words matter, and the words are essentially the cover that the administration is using to undertake actions we have not seen from many presidents, other than in cases of actual domestic turmoil, such as in the Civil War, or even in 1992 in Los Angeles, or clashes over civil rights back in the 1950s and 60s. This is a whole other level we're entering into, yet a new precedent being set.
Well, and on that note, our colleague Jacob Soboroff interviewed the border czar, Tom Homan, yesterday, and let's hear what Tom Homan had to say about the California governor and Los Angeles mayor.
Saying that about Mayor Bass and Governor Newsom? Are they at risk of being arrested?
I'll say it about anybody. You cross that line, it's a felony to knowingly harbor and conceal an illegal alien. It's a felony to impede law enforcement from doing their job.
That's pretty strong language directed towards elected officials.
And we've seen bits and pieces of this. We saw this with the judge in Wisconsin. We're seeing more clashes between the executive branch and other officials, not intellectual or policy clashes, but literal threats of arrest or other kinds of measures. So these are all different kinds of acts of intimidation and expansion. And I think Americans need to be cognizant. Again, federalism, separation of power, limits on executives are all foundational to our country, and they are being tested in every single one of these cases.
Kevin, I want to squeeze in a real quick question to you, because a moment ago, as Julian was answering a previous question, you mouthed to me immunity. Talk about it.
This is why I've been thinking about this since yesterday. Look, we can talk about what and it's good to talk about what the laws were meant to prevent or how to slow down. He has immunity. So
from the Supreme Court's decision,
you know he does, and
for official acts.
And using troops in some way that is possibly against the law, or he's not supposed to, or is out of decorum. Who cares? He has immunity.
But that's it. Julian and Kevin are sticking with us.